Hello and welcome back Space Marine players. So as always, our videos are voted on our Patreon. The Space Marine poll winner was the Incursors squad. So that's the review for today. Now we did do a very similar unit not that many weeks ago with the Infiltrator squad. And if you've yet to see that, it'll be in our Space Marine playlist and I'll put a link above as well. So the Incursors squad, another of the Marine troop options within the Space Marine book. You get between 5 and 10 models. A min unit of 5 models will set you back 5 power, or it'll be 10 power for 6 or more. Now in terms of points, it's 21 points a man, and there is one upgrade option which we'll mention in the war gear later in the video. Before we look into the stats, we need to first check out how they will interact with the book itself, looking at the keywords of note. So they can go into any chapter with the chapter keyword. They've got a smoke screen, they're a core unit, a Primaris unit, Phobos, and an infantry unit. So quite a lot there that syncs within the book. And throughout the video we're going to touch upon each one of those. As for their stats, movement 6 inch, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 4, toughness 4, wounds 2, attacks 2, leadership 7 and a 3+ save. The sergeant will have an extra attack and a point of leadership as standard, but overall pretty common stats for a Primaris Marine troop unit. On to the abilities there, and of course Angels of Death, which brings you and thou shalt know no fear to avoid any modifiers to the combat attrition tests. Bolter Discipline, which we'll discuss in more detail when we get onto the weapons. Shock Assault for the extra attack if they charged or were charged. Then Combat Doctrines, which again we'll touch upon in the weapons section. They can then Combat Squad if you take a max unit of 10 models. So this is where you're able to split them into 2 lots of 5 during deployment. And it'll only take up 1 battlefield slot in the detachment. So maybe you'll want more units covering objectives, or you could just opt to keep them as a 10 if needed. A 10 will have its advantages when you're using stratagems on the unit, so swings and roundabouts, but you've got the option. Next is concealed positions, allowing them to deploy anywhere on the battlefield as long as they're more than 9 inches away from the enemy deployment zone and enemy models. Then finally, their unique ability is multi-spectrum array, which is the ability to ignore any hit modifiers or ballistic skill modifiers, so they're always hitting on 3s. Okay, onto the weapons now. Every model is equipped with a bolt pistol, an Oculus bolt carbine, a pair of combat blades, and then frag and crack grenades. So I'll display the bolt pistol and the frag and crack grenades just for reference. You might use them, but probably not. Maybe the bolt pistol if you can get a pop shot off in combat, I guess. The main weapon here is the Oculus bolt carbine. It's a 24-inch range, rapid fire 1, strength 4, it's got no AP and 1 damage. Now each time an attack is made with this weapon, the target does not receive benefits of cover against the attack. So we've got to mention a few things here. Firstly, the unit has Bolter Discipline. On a rapid fire bolt weapon, rapid fire only triggers when firing at half range, which would be 12 inch, but with Bolter Discipline it allows the infantry units to remain stationary and fire double shots at full range, so at 24-inch range. So you can have 2 shots per Incursor model if they didn't move that movement phase. The second point of note is that they've got Combat Doctrine, which will give you an additional -1 AP, while in the Tactical Doctrine, which is turn 2, and you've got the option of having it in turn 3 as well if you kept that doctrine active. So a full unit of 10 Incursors that are throwing out 2 shots each should be giving you a total of 20 shots and on average hitting 13.3 times. Now this should be only targeting infantry units as it's only strength 4 and of course ignores light cover, which usually aids infantry models anyway. Against toughness 3 you're only requiring 3s to wound, so you'll probably net around 8.9 wounds there. Against toughness 4 it's 4s to wound, so about 6.7. Then the tougher toughness 5 units you're going to need 5s to wound, so only 4.4 there. Now it's got no AP unless you're in the Tactical Doctrine, and the damage is only 1, so it kind of depends on who you're up against when you're trying to work out the rough damage output. Now against Orc Boys for example, you can expect between 5 and 6 Orc Boys to die. It's also a similar number to toughness 3 Eldar that have a 5+ save. But against Primaris Marines, only 1 Marine will be killed, so clearly it's better served against weaker, cheaper units within the game, and definitely not to be wasted on vehicles you'll barely scratch the paint. As for the melee weapon, it's a pair of combat blades, which is strength user, making it strength 4, it's -1 AP and the damage is 1. So nothing fancy here, but it is -1 AP, and of course in the Assault Doctrine, which is turn 4 and 5, it will become a -2 AP, which is half decent. So for the breakdown of this weapon, 10 guys including the sergeant will have a total of 21 attacks, then add another one each for Shock Assault, bringing the total to 31 attacks. It's quite a fair amount of attacks there. Hitting on 3s will on average get you 20.7 hits. Now versus toughness 4 you're going to score approximately 10.3 wounds, which would actually kill around 3 or 4 Primaris Marines if you're in the Assault Doctrine, so not bad going there. If you're not in the Assault Doctrine it's more like 2 or 3. Also, you'll kill around 10 Orc Boys or the equivalent unit types that have a poor armor save and a single wound. Against toughness 5, you'll roughly get 6.9 wounds to go through before armor saves are actually made. So they're actually not that bad in combat. I wouldn't be going throwing them down the table trying to fight everything, but it's more of a solid way to defend an objective as they can shoot and also take off a good amount of wounds in combat. So these guys have an option to take a haywire mine for the unit, which is 10 points. So this is once per battle. When an enemy unit finishes a charge move within engagement range of the bearer's unit, the bearer can use the haywire mine. Now if it does, you roll a d6 and on a 2+, the enemy unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. And if it's a vehicle, it's going to be 3 mortal wounds. So charging them isn't going to be fun, especially if it's a more elite unit doing the charging, such as other Marines or Dreadnoughts. They're not going to like it, but Hordes will just probably eat it up, no problem. So that's the weapons and the war gear. Moving on to the synergy side of things, starting off with some stratagems. Now as they're core units and Phobos, they interact with quite a bit, so I'm going to cover some of the options here. Gene Rope Might for 1 CP is where you select a Primaris unit, and in the fight phase they can auto wound when they score 6s to hit. So not bad when you've got 31 attacks, so approximately 5 of those are going to be 6s. Uncompromising Firepower for 2 CP, allowing your guys to fire and still do their actions. Of course that's helping with the secondaries. Steady Advance for 2 CP considers your unit to have not moved during that phase, so you can move, still fire double shots at 24-inch range with your Bolter Discipline. Then Smokescreen for 1 CP, that makes the unit a -1 to hit when targeted by enemy units in the shooting phase. Now if you're using a Psyker, in particular a Phobos Psyker, then you've got access to both disciplines within the Codex. Now to select a few decent powers to cast on your Incursors, you've got Psychic Fortress to give them a 5+ in-1 save, Shrouding, which means the unit can only be targeted if they're the nearest unit. That's going to help them massively surviving on objectives. And Soul Sight to give rerolls to hit in the shooting phase. Now you've already got the removal of light cover, so that part's not going to have any effect, but rerolling to hit isn't bad. Also, if your Warlord is in Phobos armor, he can select the Phobos Warlord traits. Now one in particular I like the look of is Shoot and Fade. So it's being able to shoot and then move or advance after you've shot, so you can get yourself back into cover or back onto an objective. Can't however charge while doing this. Most of the litanies that target your core units will be fine to use, as they're all pretty good in combat as well as shooting, so take your pick from any of those. And of course captains have the rights of Battle Aura, giving rerolls of 1s to hit, and lieutenants have Tactical Precision to reroll wound rolls of a 1. Now just like the Infiltrators, I find that Ultramarines and Raven Guard will have a lot of joy using these guys, as Ultramarines not only get an extra bit of leadership, but they can fall back and shoot if needed. Raven Guard can get all sorts of buff by getting into light cover and turning it into dense cover as well if targeted from certain ranges. So overall another solid troop unit, and 21 points is about right for these guys. In combat I think there are better options such as the Assault Intercessors with an extra attack with Astartes Chainsword. The normal Intercessors probably shoot better as they get 3 shots a man, and in terms of denying deep strike space, Infiltrators do that job better with the Omni Scrambler. However, the Incursors have the ability to do all 3 at a decent standard, so they're kind of like the jack of all trades for your troop selection, which makes them quite valuable and very versatile. I quite like the extra with the haywire mine. It is only d3 wounds per battle, but a weakened unit will think twice about declaring a charge. Tactically, you can use the concealed positions to deny a 9-inch radius from your opponent's strategic reserves, and if you combat squad a max unit, you can use the ability on both sets of 5 to double up on the area of denial. I think they suit a mid-table objective to plonk them on from deployment, as they've got the ability to mix it up in combat and give a reasonable amount of damage output in shooting. Your opponent most likely won't be firing at them on turn 1 because they're not the biggest threat, or if they are targeted, it means your most valuable assets aren't being targeted as much that turn, so it's a win-win in that respect. As for the rating, I think the Incursor squad is going to get a Planet 40k rating of 3.5 out of 5. Better than average. I would say they're on par with Infiltrators even though they're cheaper per man. But of course it all depends on what you're using them for. If you want area denial, then select the Infiltrators, as they get a 12-inch radius with concealed positions on top and can combat squad to double up with it. But if you want a jack of all trades unit, then this is a decent selection. That's my thoughts, let me know yours below. Our poll of the day today is, what is your preferred option from the troops section? Options are the Infiltrators or the Incursors. That's it for today's video guys. As always, drop a like on your way out. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.